The film opens with a solemn gathering of the clergy, as Cardinal Dean Thomas Lawrence joins his fellow cardinals around the body of the Pope, who has passed away from heart attack. The air is thick with grief, yet Lawrence, though deeply saddened, sheds only a single tear. His sorrow is quiet, not for show, but for the loss of a figure he deeply respected. Later, Lawrence finds himself in a reflective moment with his old friend, Cardinal Aldo Ballini. Ballini sits silently, gazing at the chessboard where he had often played with the late Pope, a quiet reminder of their camaraderie. The room feels heavy with memories as Lawrence breaks the silence, asking Ballini about the Pope's health. Ballini's voice drops as he reveals that the Pope had never shared the truth of his condition with anyone, keeping his struggles hidden even from his closest confidants. Their conversation trails off into quiet contemplation until Cardinal Joseph Tremblay arrives, offering a few gentle words of comfort. Together, the three men share a brief, mournful moment before closing the door to the Pope's room, sealing it as per tradition. 3 weeks later, the sacred conclave begins. The College of Cardinals gathers in a private location, the atmosphere charged with anticipation. Lawrence, now leading the assembly, carries himself with a quiet resolve, aware of the weight of the moment. Cardinals and nuns from all over the world arrive, their faces a mix of solemnity and determination as they prepare to cast their votes for the next pope. Among the candidates, differences in ideology quickly emerge. Ballini stands as a liberal figure, contrasting sharply with Cardinal Joseph Tremblay, a staunch traditionalist. Cardinal Joshua Adami brings a socially conservative perspective, while Cardinal Gifo Tedesco represents an archaic view of the Church's future, one that Lawrence and Ballini fear could unravel years of progress. Neither man has any desire to assume the papacy themselves, but both are resolute in their mission to ensure that Tedesco does not take the seat of St. Peter. For them, this is more than a vote. It's a battle over the soul of the Church. That night, Lawrence calls for a private meeting with Archbishop Janos WNC. The Archbishop arrives looking visibly distressed, his unease written across his face. In hushed tones, he confides that the last person to meet with the Pope was Cardinal Tremblay, who had been dismissed for gross misconduct. WNC adds that after the Pope's death, Tremblay swore him to secrecy, demanding he say nothing about what transpired. But now, with Tremblay positioned as a lead candidate for the papacy, WNC feels trapped in his silence, his conscience weighing heavily on him. Lawrence listens intently, though his disbelief is clear. The weight of the revelation stirs something within him, but he chooses not to respond. Instead, he keeps WNC's words locked away, unsure of who he can truly trust. Then Lawrence receives word of the arrival of a cardinal not listed among the electors, and he meets with Monsignor Mand, who explains that the new Cardinal, Benitez, is the Archbishop of Kabul. Mand reveals that the late Pope had secretly elevated Benitez to Cardinal the previous year, recognizing his extraordinary work in war zones. This decision had been kept hidden for Benitez's safety and security. The explanation seems reasonable to Lawrence, who ultimately accepts Benitez's legitimacy. Lawrence introduces Benitez to the rest of the college, granting him the honor of blessing their meal. As Benitez speaks the blessing, a sense of quiet respect begins to ripple through the group, though not all suspicions are entirely dispelled. After the meal, the cardinals gather privately to share their thoughts on the papacy. Ballini, steadfast in his convictions, reiterates his determination to block Cardinal Tedesco from becoming pope. To Ballini, Tedesco's views represent a regressive path for the Church, one that would undo decades of progress. The discussion grows more impassioned, with alliances subtly forming and lines being drawn. Later that evening, Lawrence confronts Cardinal Tremblay in private, seeking clarity about the accusations made by WNC. Tremblay bristles at the question, his denial sharp and immediate. His frustration simmers beneath the surface as he dismisses WNC's claims entirely, suggesting the Archbishop's account is unreliable due to his frequent drinking. Lawrence says little in response, choosing instead to observe Tremblay carefully. Yet as he walks away from the conversation, doubt begins to cloud his thoughts. The truth, it seems, remains just out of reach. On the first day of the conclave, Lawrence addresses the College of Cardinals with heartfelt words, urging them to prepare for the doubt and uncertainty that often clouds such monumental decisions. His tone is steady but tinged with an underlying tension, reflecting the gravity of the task at hand. As the Cardinals cast their first votes, the tally reveals an early frontrunner, Cardinal Joshua Adami, who secures 21 votes. However, Lawrence is startled to find that a handful of votes have been cast for him and Cardinal Aldo Ballini. Later, Lawrence quietly enlists Monsignor Raymond O'Malley to investigate any lingering suspicions surrounding Cardinal Tremblay, particularly regarding Archbishop WNC's troubling accusations. However, O'Malley's search yields nothing substantial, leaving Lawrence with no solid evidence to act upon. That night, as he wanders the halls lost in thought, Lawrence overhears a heated argument between two nuns. By the time he looks, only one remains, her silhouette fading into the shadows as she moves far from her quarters. The moment leaves Lawrence uneasy, a sense of foreboding settling over him. The second day of the conclave begins, and Adami solidifies his lead with 34 votes, though he still falls short of the two-thirds majority required to claim the papacy. As tensions rise within the college, a sudden commotion from the streets interrupts their proceedings. The sound of an explosion echoes through the air, a grim reminder of the volatile world outside their cloistered walls. Lawrence quickly moves to keep the news contained, fearing that outside influences might sway the elector votes. The lunch hour brings yet another disruption. Adami is publicly confronted by a nun, Sister Shumi, the same figure Lawrence glimpsed the previous night. Her voice cuts through the room, filled with emotion and urgency. This unexpected confrontation raises eyebrows and murmurs among the cardinals, casting a shadow over Adami's candidacy. Determined to uncover the truth, Lawrence seeks out Sister Agnes, who grants him permission to speak with Shumi directly. "Would you like me to hear your confession?" What she reveals shakes him to his core. She and Adami conceived a child out of wedlock 3 decades earlier when she was just 19. Adami later admits to Lawrence that it was a lapse in judgment, a moment of weakness he deeply regrets. Bound by the sanctity of confession, Lawrence is sworn to secrecy. Yet whispers spread like wildfire through the conclave, and Adami's support crumbles. His votes plummet from 34 to a meager 9, leaving his candidacy in tatters. Meanwhile, O'Malley informs Lawrence of a strange revelation. The Pope had personally arranged for Cardinal Benitez to be flown to Geneva for an undisclosed medical procedure. Despite this new lead, O'Malley urges Lawrence to continue investigating Tremblay. However, Lawrence, weighed down by the swirling politics and his own moral conflict, reluctantly declines, choosing to tread cautiously. In the wake of Adami's fall, the alliances begin to shift. Boligny, unwilling to let Tedesco gain traction, reluctantly starts to back Tremblay. The conclave grows more fractured, the path to choosing the next pope growing increasingly murky as personal ambitions and buried secrets collide. Later, Lawrence meets with Benitez in private. During their conversation, Benitez quietly admits that he cast his vote for Lawrence in the papal election. Taken aback, Lawrence firmly tells Benitez to stop voting for him, explaining with quiet determination that he has no desire to become pope. His words carry both resolve and an undercurrent of frustration as he tries to steer the attention away from himself and back to the church's future. Soon after, Sister Agnes pulls Lawrence aside with a shocking revelation of her own. She informs him that Tremblay had Sister Shumi transferred to the Vatican, a move Lawrence interprets as a calculated ploy to sabotage Adami and derail his candidacy. Later, confronting Tremblay in private, Lawrence's voice is edged with anger, accusing him of scheming to destroy Adami's chances. Tremblay, however, denies any such motive, claiming the transfer was arranged at the Pope's request and that they were unaware of Shumi's connection to Adami. But the confrontation takes a bitter turn as Tremblay accuses Lawrence of harboring his own ambitions for the papacy, a claim Lawrence vehemently denies, though the tension lingers in the air. Haunted by doubt and suspicion, Lawrence takes a daring step. That night, he sneaks into the Pope's sealed room, the air heavy with the weight of its sanctity. Among the late Pope's belongings, he uncovers a notebook and several incriminating documents detailing Tremblay's bribery of other cardinals in an attempt to secure their votes. The truth is laid bare. This was why the Pope had demanded Tremblay's resignation. Stunned and furious, Lawrence takes the evidence to Boligny, expecting an ally. But to his dismay, Boligny advises him to burn the documents, subtly revealing his own complicity in accepting a bribe. The betrayal cuts deep, leaving Lawrence shaken and questioning who among them can truly be trusted. By the third day, Lawrence and Sister Agnes take decisive action. Together, they make copies of the incriminating documents and expose Tremblay's treachery to the college. The revelation sparks an uproar among the cardinals, shaking the very foundation of the conclave. Amidst the chaos, Agnes confirms that Tremblay's true motive for transferring Shumi to the Vatican was indeed to humiliate Adami and dismantle his candidacy. Tremblay's downfall is swift and absolute. In the aftermath, Boligny approaches Lawrence, his voice heavy with regret as he seeks forgiveness for his actions. Despite the betrayal, Lawrence grants him forgiveness, though their once solid bond now feels irrevocably altered. As the conclave enters its final phase, the votes narrow down to 2 stark choices: the rigid and traditional Tedesco, or the reluctant but steadfast Lawrence. The weight of the decision looms over the cardinals, with the fate of the church hanging precariously in the balance. Meanwhile, a suicide bomber detonates outside the Vatican, causing significant damage to the Sistine Chapel and leaving several casualties in the streets. The blast shakes the very foundations of the conclave, and the cardinals, now faced with the horror of this violence, gather in stunned silence. Tedesco, ever the hardliner, wastes no time in placing blame extremists. He calls for the church to take a stand to fight against what he sees as an existential threat. His words, filled with righteous fury, provoke an outraged response from many in the room. But in the midst of a heated exchange, Cardinal Vincent Bonitz rises. His calm presence cuts through the tension as he speaks from a place of raw, lived experience. With quiet passion, Bonitz shares the horrors he witnessed during his time in war zones, where violence only begets more violence. He urges the cardinals to remember that peace, not retaliation, is the true path of the church. His words resonate deeply, and the room falls silent in reflection. After the final vote, a hush falls over the enclave. The results are clear. Cardinal Vincent Bonitz is elected Pope Innocent XIV. The cardinals, though wary of his unorthodox journey to the papacy, respect the depth of his conviction. In the wake of the election, Monsignor Raymond O'Malley pulls Lawrence aside, the weight of the past few days clearly bearing down on him. He presses Lawrence about Bonitz's secret trip to Switzerland, a matter that now demands clarification. Later, Lawrence meets with Bonitz privately. The truth he uncovers is far more personal and profound than anything he could have anticipated. Bonitz, in a quiet and vulnerable moment, reveals that he is intersex. He was born with ovaries and a uterus, something he only discovered after undergoing an appendectomy. The Pope had known of this condition, but had kept it a closely guarded secret. Bonitz had also undergone a procedure for a laparoscopic hysterectomy, though he chose not to follow through, deciding instead to live as God made him. Lawrence, moved by the trust Bonitz places in him, agrees to keep this secret, honoring the dignity of the man and the will of God. The Vatican officially announces Bonitz's election, and the smoke signals rise into the sky, a symbol of a new beginning. As Lawrence listens to the distant cheers of the crowd, a quiet smile spreads across his face. Despite the turmoil, despite the shadows that had loomed over the conclave, there is hope.